Hello everyone, my name is Jen and welcome to the Book Refuge. Alright my loves, welcome to November. Are you panicking? I'm not panicking. It's totally fine that we're in the last 2 months of the year. What the actual hell? But we got a lot to do today because as some of you so lovingly noticed, I was actually gone last weekend. I went to visit my friends in Duluth, which was just so much fun. One of my dearest friends lives there with her family, and I hadn't been out there to see her in a while because we'd seen each other in our hometown, or she's the one who went to Iowa with me for a book signing, so I didn't make it out there, and it was just so much fun. I just can't believe how my friend's family has grown and just how big her kids are. And yes, it definitely makes my womb clench a little bit and wish I had some adorable little rugrats running around, but also I wouldn't be able to read the amount of books that I do. So there are trades that we make in life, and that's currently where mine is at, right? But we have so many books to talk about because of that. We have quite a few rereads, some absolutely bananas, other books in there, as well as the fanfiction readathon has started. So I do have the first couple of those to fit in. Now, if you're not a fanfiction fan, number one, I hope you would give it a try because really there's something for everybody out there. But if you're not, don't worry. I still have a healthy amount of other things that will be mixed in with my books the next couple of weeks because I still have a Patreon book I have to get through. I have one more I still have to reread. Just ran out of little time, as well as still arcs and stuff coming out. So don't worry, this won't just be about Hermione, even though I wish it could be. But yeah, we got a lot to talk about. So let's go ahead and dive in here to get to these. Oh, I also do need to welcome a couple people. So Crystal from a different Crystal, not Crystal Bookish Big Sis, but one of my other friends on YouTube actually joined as a supporter. So Crystal, thank you so much for joining my Patreon. And then Nicole C, who is already a Patreon, became a channel member, which gets you early access to those things. So definitely check out those if you would like extra content from me. I have almost 100 behind the scenes vlogs that have been filmed at this point, which is really exciting to me. I love that. As well as just early access to certain things and one-on-one chats with me and stuff like that. So it's really great. So definitely check that out. But okay, let's get into the book. So the first one that I got through, I actually listened to an ALC of this one. And then the PA for this author, she'd reached out to me over a month ago, and I honestly didn't know if I was still getting this, which was fine because I already had an ALC when this PA actually reached out to me and asked if I would like a copy of it. And I was like, sure, I'll take a physical copy of it too. And so it did arrive like the day after I finished it. I was like, oh, look at that. So this was actually The Wolf of Mayfair by Christy Cadwell. And this is actually my first Christy Cadwell. She's been on my TBR for years. And as often does, there was her upcoming book coming. And so I just signed up through NetGalley. So I had both an eARC and the ALC, and then the PA to her sent me this, which is beautiful, by the way. I love that there is a historical like this. And this one was actually done from Montlake, which is Amazon's publishing company. So that's great that they published a historical romance. But this one here, hold on, I have my notes down here. As I said, I did listen to the ALC though, and this was narrated by Paula Netterhorst. Sure, I messed that up. And Will Thorne, which I have heard him before. But this is a Scottish heroine in this one, which was really lovely. But anyway, this one is, oh, this is so interesting. Sorry, now I just got distracted. This isn't told in first person, it's in third person, but the blurb on the back is in first person. That's kind of weird, isn't it? It is. But anyway, this is about Anthony, and he is the son of this duke that is just kind of an asshole. And so he's actually staying at the Horace house, which was left to him, and his parents are somewhere else. And now this girl, her name is Helia, she actually is on the run from a lecherous man who's trying to marry her for her dowry, a cousin, I guess it is. And he is intent on forcing himself on her by any means necessary. And so Helia is actually the goddaughter of Anthony's mother, though he's never met her, doesn't know anything about her. And so when she shows up there, he immediately is like, oh, well, this woman's looking for a place to stay. Maybe she can stay in my bed with me. Like, he immediately is having some kind of lecherous thoughts about her, which is a tad off-putting, but when you like see just his mental state and how he's feeling about things, he very much is looking for some debauchery and pleasure, mindless pleasure. And Helia is looking for a safe place to stay. So they definitely are at odds at the start of this for sure. But she explains her situation, that she's here to throw herself upon the mercy of his mother. And he's like, just so you know, there are a lot of people who have claimed my mother as their godmother, and she hasn't necessarily really accepted it. So basically what she's saying is that there are friends of his mother who've named their children as like her goddaughter so that they could like pressure her into supporting them in society and stuff like that. So that's kind of what his claim is he's like, sure, you say my mom is your godmother, but I've never heard of you. And, you know, there are plenty of women throughout the country who would claim that, but my mother wouldn't even know what they look like, right? So he's being very like hard ass about it, and she's in desperate help. And she's kind of forced to stay there because this big storm kicks up. And he honestly makes it pretty clear that like, if you stay here, something's probably going to happen between us. Like, again, he's very kind of like that lecherous feel in the beginning. And so for her, it's like, did I escape this guy who's trying to force me to marry him just to end up with this guy who wants to like debauch me or whatever? But anywho, there is a like enemies to lovers heated passion between the two of them. And she very quickly kind of stirs up his protective side. And then when her cousin has chased her down to there, we discover that Anthony now is ready to like protect her or whatever. So if you maybe can't tell from some of my description, this went from him like, well, he doesn't like hate her, but he doesn't care to have her there. He doesn't want to help her. He doesn't seem to have any pity for her at all. You know, he's that kind of attitude of like, nobody ever had pity for me when I would need it or whatever. To like marrying her by the end of like a few days type of thing. So yeah, this was definitely like an insta-lust, insta-love situation, but it did read very easy, and it definitely was like pretty sexy, not just because they don't jump right into bed with anyone right away, but he's very like trying to tempt her into things and very sexy in that way. So, you know, I see the appeal to it in certain aspects, but this did end up being a 3.5 star for me, and it was like a 2.5 on the spice scale. And there are trigger warnings for attempted SA, death of a family member, grief, and abusive parents. So a lot in there, but it was a quick read. And because it's Amazon, I believe that it's read and listen. So if you are looking for a quick historical read, and it also doesn't say that it's a part of a series, so it's currently a standalone too. So I know that those are some things that are sometimes hard to find with historical. So I'm not saying it was awful. It just, I feel like Christy Cadwell has maybe written better. Next up, I had another ALC. This time it was sent to me, of course, from Must Love Audio. And this was called Villainous Kingpin by Eva Winters. Now, this was actually the first Eva Winters that I've ever read. Now, I have seen her around for quite a while, and I just haven't given her a try yet. She's one of the mafia authors who's kind of been on my TBR. And so, of course, when Must Love Audio offers me a audio for review, I jump on top of it, right? So this one was actually really fun too. This is book 1 in the Kingpins of the Syndicate, and there are a good amount of books in this series. Like, I actually already have the ALC of the next one, which I'm very excited for as well, because that couple was set up. But this one had kind of an interesting mafia setup, which is why I think some people really like this one, because we have Winter and Bass, who actually she calls Boss, because I think that's with the accent what it's supposed to be, but because I listened to it for 90%, right? But, you know, I always grab the ebook too, just in case to follow along. And it said B-A-S, but she calls him Boss, anyway, I'm sure it has something to do with the language that it's in, because his full name, I can't even remember what his Italian full name is. But anyway, so I may say Bass or Boss, but they're the same person. So anyway, Winter is actually sneaking out of her uncle's home in the beginning of this. She's actually a figure skater. She's in, I can't remember what city she's in, but she's away from her mom for the first time in a while, going to, I think, some classes, and her mother was a figure skater who had to leave it because of an injury, and we don't quite know like who all of her connections, but the point is she's actually a lost mafia princess. I'll just put that out there because it'll be obvious to you when you start it that like there's a lost Russian princess that we're looking for, and this girl doesn't know her full history. You'll see where we're going with this. But her father was actually a figure skater too, but he's dead, and her mother had to lose her career. So there's all these different clues that are put out. I won't lay it all down for you, but she's sneaking out of her uncle's house. She's a bit of a daredevil and a risk taker. Her and her two friends actually do some like naughty things where they'll like steal from certain places, and they're like pretty wealthy girls, so they don't need to be doing that. Like there's just a lot, but also she was very lovable at the same time. I know it's weird to say, but yeah, Winter is sneaking out, and Bass happens to be there for a meeting with her uncle, but like they don't know who the other person is. He's never seen this guy's niece before or whatever, and she's sneaking out, and he actually like catches her when she jumps out of the window or she would have hurt herself, and he just asks for, I think he asked to like talk to her again or a date or whatever, but they just have this charming meeting outside her window or whatever, and later on they run into each other again, and that's when he finally claims his date, and they go on this super hot date. By the way, I think he lets her drive his car like on this date, and everything is really a hot car and everything. Love it. But they have this really great date, and she's like, why didn't you ask for something more than a date? Like I thought you would demand something. And he had sexiest line, and he's like, I can't remember what endearment he's, but he's like, honey, you're gonna give me all the other things. I didn't need to demand them. You're gonna give them to me. And like, I'm sorry, like panty melting right there. It absolutely was, because he just sounds so sexy. This is also read in duet style by Aaron Shedlock and Stella Hunter, so fantastic performance, just wonderful. So anyway, the first like 60% of this story actually takes place during like them falling in love with each other. And then though, not to like spoil the details of it, but something happens that splits them up. Now, you guys know I don't normally love that, blah, 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 all these things. However, just to kind of assuage some of the worries, assuage, that's the word I can never say, assuage some worries, because I know some of you are like me. This separation is for less than a year, and she does witness and live through some pretty awful things that cause her to do that. But he never stops looking for her, and because it's a less than a year time period, I don't know, it feels more believable to me sometimes than, you know, this isn't a 10 year split, and it's also not a secret baby one, okay? I'm just putting that out there, which when I read in the description that they were separated for 9 months, I was like, are you serious? Like, is this gonna be, it's not. There's no surprise baby or secret baby or any of that for it, but because she's a figure skater, the way that he sees her again is she's at the Olympics and she's on TV, and he's like, serious. So she has a different name. She didn't lie to him about her name, but she has a name that she uses when she's skating that's different from like her name. So anyway, all that to say, I ended up giving this one 4 stars. Now, it was riding on a 5-star, if you can't tell, for most of it. And it isn't even the like the split that I'm upset about, because again, when you read it, like, I understand what happened. It's a bit of the, like, when they get back together, some things that happen. So I still really loved it. As I said, I asked for the second one right away. I loved how this one started as though, like, it was an insta-lust, but also they were, like, so innocently dating each other for, like, he's a mafia kingpin, she is a lost Russian princess who doesn't know, and they're just so innocently falling in love, and it really is, like, the harsh realities that crash in on them, and I loved it so much. So the audio is available now. It's also on ebook, all of those good things. So I gave it 5 stars. It's like a 3.5 on the spice scale. This one has attempted essay actual essay, violence, gore, loss of a child, not to death, which I won't explain, but there is a loss of a child in a way, abusive parent. And then see my nose, I was like, the breakup was a bit of a stretch how it happened. So still definitely recommend. When I make another mafia video, this will be on it because I enjoyed it. And the next one is set, I believe, to be a forced marriage, which this one actually has some forced marriage aspect of it too. But the next one, I think the whole thing will be about a forced marriage with one of her friends and one of his cousins. And I like that. Oh, I remember one of the other reasons it was 4 stars. Sorry, let me put it out there. This is very clearly a spin-off series from another one. And I've never read them, right? This is my first Eva Winners. And there is a part of this book where we actually have POVs of other people that I assume we've had before, right? And so I feel that if you've read Eva Winners before, this book means a lot more to you than it does to me. And as a fresh to me thing, it felt very disjointed that we were throwing in this third POV when we hadn't at all before. It just showed up and wasn't the biggest fan. So just wanted to, that was the other reason too. So if you've read Eva Winners before, you're probably going to love this, right? It's there for you. Okay, moving along, just quick mention, I read Ghost Walk by Cassandra Gannon. This was the Patreon read of the month, so I won't be talking about this one, but I did annotate this, and there's an exclusive review available right now on my Patreon. Also, by the way, this is something I haven't, shared enough about yet because it's new. On my Patreon, there's now an option to just purchase certain videos like you would buy something from Prime or whatever, if you think me cool enough to do that too. But I also have a playlist that has all my exclusive reviews, so you'll be able to buy that and then have access to all of those without having to be like a monthly subscriber or anything. I also have free trials available on my Patreon, and if you do those, you get access to videos as well. So anyway, Ghost Walk was our choice for October for a paranormal read, and I won't tell you how I felt about it because that's exclusive, but I will say that this one involves kind of like a time traveling situation a little bit. It has a Scottish captain from the Revolutionary War times whose name is Jamie. Okay, yes. And then Grace Riviera is in current times, and her family is very paranormal. So when she loses her job as a crime scene investigator because she has a mental break when she sees a ghost for the first time, because she's always thought her family is a little bit kooky and maybe doesn't really have it all straight, right? She becomes someone who's giving ghost walk tours in, we're not in New Orleans, we're in Harrisonburg. And that's when she starts talking with this ghost named Jamie Rorden, who no one has ever been able to speak to him or see him in the 230 years that he's been dead. So very intriguing. This was my first Cassandra Gannon, and if you'd like to know my thoughts, check out my Patreon. Okay, next up, I read Only With Me by Brooke Montgomery. So this is out now. The audiobook is not available for this one yet, which is kind of a bummer. She used to have them closer to coming out, but they have stretched a bit. But this one is book 4 in Sugarland Creek, and there are some absolutely fabulous things about this one. I have so many books to talk about still, so I don't want to dive too deep into this. How do I go about this one? Okay, so first off, I'll say this is my favorite relationship in the series. Honestly, I'm putting it right out there. This is Harlow, who is the younger sister of Waylon, who he's one of the oldest. So there's twin brothers who are the oldest in this family. She actually went through the couples, from youngest to oldest is how we went, Noah, who's the youngest, she was the first book, and we've kind of went through. So we have Waylon and Wilder, who are the last 2 brothers to go. And so this one, I'll also say this is going to be cute because Sin With Me will be the last book in the series, and that one's going to be Wilder and the older sister of this one. So they're both, one of them is a brother's ex and one of them is a sister's ex, right? So this one is the sister's ex. I just think that was brilliant. Okay, I love that Brooke did that, by the way. But this one is Waylon, and he is the ex-boyfriend of Harlow's older sister. Now, they're still friends. Harlow actually does training at the farm, right? Like a lot of the characters in this series do. And she is, I think, 12 years younger than him. So she is 20 and he's 32, I think is how it is. And they've like gotten along just fine. And again, he has a really amicable ex situation with her sister because a big theme of this is actually caretaking. Okay. So Harlow's father had a workplace accident and he is now an amputee of one of his legs. And so he has needed a lot of care from the family. And then when Harlow was really young is when this happened. But like her older sister was just like, you know, a new adult at this time. And that's when her older sister and Waylon were dating. Sorry, I don't want to tell you the entire thing, but I'm just setting up how like it's an amicable thing, right? How it's amicable. And she just was, that older sister was very busy helping take care of the dad. And then Harlow actually had a horrible injury that happened to her that was done to her by someone, not a family member. Someone attacked her horribly, not a SA, literally a physical attack. She was brutally attacked when she was 13 years old. And so this happened to this family. The dad was hurt the year before, and then the year after, Harlow was hurt. So Waylon and this older sister, though they liked each other a lot, they dated for a while, that she was so busy taking care of her family that their relationship didn't really have a chance. And Waylon, he actually does caretaking too. And this is a big part of this story. I'll put up trigger warning or content or spoiler tags soon. But again, I don't want to tell everything because I have a book later on that I want to rant about. And I don't want to rant about this one. I just want to warn you about some of the stuff, okay? Because I hate saying I liked it, but I appreciate how Brooke told this story. So I'm not ranting about it. I just want to warn you about it because it's very heavy, okay? But Waylon takes care of Wilder. And this is something that hasn't really been shared in any of the other books, but Wilder has some mental health issues. Now, he has accidentally almost hurt himself a few times. Not almost, he has hurt himself a few times. And again, I don't want to go into all the details of that, but there's self-harm in the pursuit of like adrenaline. Let's call it that, okay? Not the like, I want to end myself. But so there's a lot that this family has dealt with. And so Waylon has been literally his brother's keeper. They live together. He's always worried about certain things with him. And so Waylon hasn't dated anyone in years either because he's always looking out for Wilder. So that's why those two didn't work out. Nobody cheated on each other. Nobody had a thing. Like, it's not that kind of toxic ex-girlfriend thing. It's literally just he dated the older sister, and also Harlow is 12 years younger than him. So that's where the taboo aspect. And these two actually first connect through a group text where they don't have each other's names in the text. It's a group of riders and trainers who all work at the place or in a text. And they end up kind of like flirting through the text and then starting a side thing. And again, they don't know who each other is. And pretty early on in this book, actually, Waylon discovers who she is. And so he ghosts her. But he loved talking to her so much that he ends up finding her on a dating site. And now they know who each other is. But he doesn't tell her that he was the one who ghosted her before. So that's enough explaining about that. I don't want to do that. But they have my favorite relationship for a few reasons that I do want to say. One, they're like back and forth in their messages. There's a lot of sweetness in it. Of course it gets steamy. Of course it gets sexy. But it's just so wholesome before it gets sexy. Like, I just love it. And they also just understand so much about each other because of the caretaking aspect and, you know, it causing so much stress in your life, and also like that tiny bit of resentment you get towards the person you're caretaking for. There's just a lot. And part of the reason this is so like real is, again, Brooke has she gives very good trigger warnings. So none of this is she trying to just like spring it on you. If you read her author's note at the beginning, she actually tells you too that like she's been caretaking for her husband for a while. And I actually knew that, like, her husband actually had to have a foot amputated, I believe due to diabetes, I think is what it is. And so there's a lot of this in there that's her real thing. And the thing is, like, you can feel it. So this was one of my favorite relationships, but I gave this book 4 stars. And again, I don't want to go like too much into this because she does give you trigger warnings for all the things. So I'm going to read the trigger warnings off to you, and then which are like, she lists them all. So I'm not like, you know, if you don't want to know any of the trigger warnings, you can go, but I need to tell you what they are so that I can tell you why this was a 4-star. Because again, this is my favorite couple we've read, but how this story like played out isn't my favorite. Okay, so the trigger warnings for this are self-harm, mental health, depression, self-medicating, alcoholism, assault, PTSD, suicide attempts, non-fatal and fatal overdoses, kidnapping, death of a parent on page, and a parent with a DNR. Okay, so those are the trigger warnings, both hers and a little bit of embellishment from mine. Okay, so now I'm going to put up the spoiler warning because I'm going to tell you why this didn't work. If you're someone who can read pretty much everything and you go read her author's note and think you can, like, I really think you'll like this because, again, I love this couple. I will say this is her slowest burn yet, and part of that is why it's a 4-star. And I hate saying that, I'm sorry, because it's not because there wasn't enough spice in this for me. It's how and when the spice happens. That is why it's a 4-star for me, okay? But anyway, this is her slowest burn yet, and their connection is amazing. Like, it's really, really good connection. But here's what happens, okay? So the reason why this is that her father has had multiple suicide attempts again. And, you know, one of those trigger warnings I just read was death of a parent on page. And he also has a DNR. So at about 85% into this book, her father does succeed in an attempt. And not only is there going to be some guilt wrapped up in that because her whole family has really tried to do that, but we're just kind of supposed to accept too that he's been in a lot of pain and this might be better for him. And I'm not crying because I disagree with that. The way she's told this story, like, I totally get it. But what didn't work for me was the pacing of that. It really didn't work. I know it sounds awful, but I almost would have preferred, if we were going to lose that parent, that it either happened earlier in the story or it was like in the epilogue. Like maybe in the epilogue we say like, my father finally succeeded and like Waylon was here for me when it happened. Like, because the way it happens in this book, by having it be the third act, which again, doesn't lead to a breakup between them, doesn't lead to any drama at all. It is completely an emotional third act. Because not only does that happen with her dad, but there's also something that boils over with Wilder as well. So they're both dealing with that and they don't blame each other. None of that. That was fine. What the pacing didn't work for me is that we lose her dad to his unaliving of himself. And Waylon is there for her. It's really beautiful. And then we skip 6 weeks. Like, it literally is, he's died. We've had the funeral. We skip 6 weeks and they're having sex for the first time in that chapter that we skipped there. So I didn't appreciate that pacing and I didn't appreciate the emotional whiplash. Now, that's not to say that this isn't a real life thing, because yeah, you do still move on and have sex after someone in your life dies. And 6 weeks later, I don't think there's anything inappropriate about it. Okay. In my mind, I don't have a problem with that. What I have the problem with is that we've been teasing each other and having like phone sex and having all these things all the way up, and it's been hot, it's been great. And then we have this death that we've kind of been dreading and expecting, and everyone's just kind of like, well, it was inevitable. He was going to do it anyway. Like, we knew it was going to happen, and then they're having sex. And so, it just really soured it for me, and it took all the joy out of, like, we finally got to a steamy scene, because now we're at, so that happens at 85%, now we're at 90%, and they have sex, and then they have sex in every, like, other page for the rest of it. So, I'm sorry, I just thought that pacing was atrocious. I'm like, what are you doing? So you can see my mind where I'm like, if we'd had the father die in like the second act, and I'm not trying to rewrite a story for someone, but if we'd have the father lose him then, and we have them then maybe like, oh, well, maybe now isn't the time to tell people we're together because of that, but like, then we had more space for it. So anyway, I need to move on because we're only a few books in and I have so many to go. And like I said, I have one to really rant about later on, but I didn't dislike it. But I will say this series, and I was actually talking with a Instagrammer about this, who she was asking me my thoughts about it before she read it. She wanted to know how heavy it was and everything. And I really wish that Brooke would stop advertising these ones as spicy romance now, because they're really not spicy cowboy romance, y'all. They're very tame. Like, I'm serious, besides the first book with Noah and Fisher, none of these have been that same thing. Like, I mean, Magnolia, she was a horny chick, but even they weren't doing much. Like, stop just pulling the spicy clips out of these. These are good. I don't dislike her books at all, but I just think the expectation of like showing all the sexy scenes for the art, showing all the spicy quotes for the thing, like these books aren't about that. And that's okay. Like, it's okay. You know, having these covers the way they are, it's setting you up to think something else that it's not. And I think it disservices her series. So, okay, we're moving on. Okay, but now we had a few like rereads of things, so I can go kind of quicker with those. So I reread Save One Thing by J. Wolfe. We won't go into full details of this, but my patron Daniela is getting like all of the Julia Wolfe books done. And so this one is the first one in Savage Academy. This one is about Beckett and Luciana, which if you read the Savage U series, Luciana's sister has the first book in the series, Soft Like Thunder, and Beckett's brother is Julian, and his book is the last book in that series. So this is them. We go back to high school for this series, but it's pretty good. They're both actually soccer players, and Beckett has wanted Luciana since he first met her when he was 13, which is when their siblings got together. Or not their siblings. When they like met because their siblings were friends. That's what it was. And he's just been biding his time to get with her. So this is a double virgin story. This is a secretly pining hero, and it's their senior year, and he's finally ready to make his move. So enjoyable. This one is still a 4-star read, 2.5 on the spice scale. It is tough for me to put my mind back in high school, so I kind of pretend they're in college. When you're at a boarding school anyway and you like live in a dorm and stuff, I just think of them like they're in college. I have to. I know not everyone will, but I do. Okay, then this one was wild, okay? I read Bass Ackwards by Eris Adderley, and this was gifted to me. Oh, shucks. Who gifted this to me? I don't have it nearby, but one of you lovely people gifted this to me along with one of my books from my wish list, which I always have linked down below. And I was like, what is this? So after reading a few heavier books in a row, I actually grabbed this on ebook while I was away last weekend, and I devoured this one. Now, it was a bit of a tough start because this hero's name is Bill Marshall. And I have a great uncle named Bill Marshall. So I wish this guy's nickname had been Will instead of Bill. But anyway, so Bill Marshall owns a hardware store, and Christina Lee Dodd is one of his employees. And at the beginning of this book, in the first chapter, Christina Lee needs Friday off of work because of something that she has to go do. And she goes to ask Bill if she can leave early. And he's like, if you want to leave early, you need to bend over that table right there and let me fuck you. And that's what this book is. And so she lets him do that. And then, like, the next time she works, he actually offers her basically, like, a raise if, like, an hour a week he can, like, have her. And that's all. Like, literally, that's what this is. It was wild. It was pretty hot. Like, the sexy things they do. There's some, like, anal, semi-public scenes. There's power dynamic, degradation. But what's funny, though, is that, not funny, but Bill did this, and number one, he can't believe she said yes. Like, he honestly is like, what? He's so reverently obsessed with her, and in his mind, he's kind of playing this game to get her into him. It's so hard to explain, but this was so fun. It really was. It's an erotic romance for sure. But it's a 4 on my spice scale. I did give it a 3.5 just because it's so ludicrous, but I also still enjoyed myself. So I think if you're looking for kind of almost an absurd erotic romance with a secretly like simp of a hero, like, you should give it a go because it definitely was not awful. Okay, next up I had another ALC. This one was Of Heartbreak and Harmony by Britt Benson. This was my first Britt Benson, and it is the second book in the Hometown Heartless, which this is a rock star romance. Now, I've said multiple times, there's really two types of like romance that I don't love, and it's honestly like MC romance and rock star romance are just what I don't like, because they usually have a lot to do with like drugs and with a certain way of like treating women. And I know I love dark romance, but rock star romance is tough for me. However, two things. This was offered by Must Love Audio, and as I say multiple times, they pull me out of my comfort zone and get me to try new to me authors, so I wanted to give it a go. And it is a duet narration with Stephen Dexter and Stella Hunter, both of which I adore them. So I gave it a go, and I enjoyed this one a lot. It was very heavy. This one has trigger warnings for stalking, drug and alcohol use, a traumatic car accident with fatalities, accident recovery, depression, stalking, financial insecurity, and stroke care for a parent. So all of these things are happening. This is actually also a second chance romance, and our heroine, Callie, actually used to have a band, and she meets Torin and the Hometown Heartless when they're at like a festival, and they have a little fling together. And then before the festival is even over, they've been dropped by their record label that had just picked them up, because they are seen as a threat to the Hometown Heartless. So the record label is afraid of pissing off the Hometown Heartless, and so they drop them. They drop them like it's hot, and now they're like, chances are ruined. And then also around that time, Callie's mother has a stroke, and so she leaves tour with her band and goes back home to take care. But she hates the Hometown Heartless. Now it's a few years later, and she actually runs into them again somehow, and Torin is attracted to her again. Now, he doesn't remember her from back then because him and his band did a lot of drugs. They have cleaned themselves up a good amount now. They're just getting kind of tired of that life. Not completely, but a good amount. And so he feels really drawn to this woman. And he actually does remember this woman he had this fling with at this thing. He actually has a secret tattoo that he got to remind him of this girl, but he doesn't completely remember her. And so when he runs into her again, she's really standoffish with him, gets him interested in her. And it turns out there's someone stalking their lead singer. And so through some, celebrity reasons, he tries to hire Callie to be his fake girlfriend for the rest of the tour, and he's going to pay her a crap ton of money to be his fake girlfriend, and she needs the money for her mom, so she agrees to do it, but she hates the Hometown Heartless for what they did to her. So yeah, it's a complicated knot. Now, we do have flashbacks for a good portion of this book where we find out what happened, about like how things happened during that festival and like everything that went on. Now, you guys know I'm not a huge fan of flashbacks. I wish we would either tell the part of the story and then skip. But the way that this one is happening, because the hero doesn't remember it, and these flashbacks are like him remembering pieces of it because of how much drugs and stuff he used to be on. So it makes logical sense why we're doing flashbacks. It's not just the author kind of leaning on them. Like, she makes it make sense. And they don't last for the whole book. They last up until he fully remembers, and then we have the rest of it. So I really liked this. I loved how they fell in love. There's even a song at the end of this one. And I enjoyed it a lot. I gave it 4.5 stars. It was a 3.5 on the spice scale. There was actually a hot MFM scene in this. This isn't an MFM relationship, but there is a threesome scene in here. And I won't lie, that is the scene that made me read the book. And I'm glad that I did, because I did it, and I'll read more Britt Benson for sure. Okay, then I read a fan fiction. No, we hadn't started the readathon yet, but I wanted to read another little short one. So I don't have a ton to say about this one, but I read The Wand Maker by Changing Fae. And this one is just like, it ends up being like 90 pages. And Draco actually owns a sex shop, and Hermione is just having trouble relaxing, I think. And I don't think it's Pansy. I honestly think it's Ginny suggests that she go to see the Wand Maker, who is Draco, and he makes sex toys, magical sex toys. And they do this he does this diagnostic thing for her that like lets him see like what her kinks are and everything. And it basically tells him that, like, her kink is him. And so she's super embarrassed. She blames him that he did this. He made it look like this. And Draco tells her, he's like, no, I didn't. That's not how it works. Like, it doesn't. Like, you are attracted to me. So anyway, they end up having a hot little thing together, and it was fine. So as I've said, I'm not sharing my like ratings for these anymore. I'll just say whether I recommend it or not for fan fictions. And like, I do recommend it. It was quick. It was fun. I liked the setup of like him owning a sex shop and like helping women find pleasure and stuff. I love it. And I love the idea too of like a spell that will show you what like your kinks are, like diagnostically. I love it. So yeah, this one had bondage, edging, choking, sex toys, and praise kink in it. So yeah, I'll have the link to that one down below. Okay, here we go. Now we are to the tryst, and buckle up because this is the one that I have some ranting to go about, okay? I don't know how long I'll talk about it, but I'm going to rant about it. Okay, so the tryst is actually out for everyone, I think, on November 6th, but it's available on her website now. Sawyer Bennett does this because she's not exclusive to Amazon. She makes her stuff available on her website 2 weeks before it's available worldwide. So you can just go buy it directly from her at any time. And so I did that. Even the audiobooks are done. So this is the third book in the Bluegrass Empire, and I have really enjoyed The Feud and The Forbidden. Loved both of those books. So I, of course, was anticipating the tryst. This is about Trey, who is the middle brother, I guess. Because, yeah, there's 3 brothers and a sister and 2 sisters in this. And the tryst is actually a second chance romance between Trey and Holland. So Trey and Holland, Holland basically grew up at their house when she was young. Her family was not a great place to live, and so she would actually take riding lessons at the farm, and she was there all the time, and she was friends with the sisters. And when she was 18 years old, she and Trey fall in love, and they have a summer fling. And then something happened that split them up. And she's back in town for the first time in 11 years because her abusive asshole of a father died and left her his business. And she actually lives in Switzerland. So she's like back here where she's just going to like tie up the family business and then move away. But Trey sees her again, and they still have the chemistry they did, and so he basically talks her into like, you can't stay away from me, I can't stay away from you, let's have a tryst again while you're home until you leave. And his plan though is to use the tryst to get her to fall for him again. Now this book really pissed me off in one specific way. Okay, so let's see, what else do I want to explain? So yeah, this one also has a few flashbacks in it, and the reason why they broke up when they were young is a frustrating thing. Let me just say that. But I like kind of understand why it happened because they were only 18 and 22, and basically the issue back then was, nope, I won't tell you because I'm going to put up a spoiler thing. Because the reason that I'm mad about this doesn't have to do with that, okay? It doesn't have to do with it. It's basically the same thing that happened in The Forbidden, right? Where, like, Gabe was afraid to tell their families and they split up and they've been apart, right? So I was like, wow, this is kind of similar. And there's even, like, she points that out, too, because when Kat is telling Holland about, like, how she got with Gabe and everything, she's like, I gave him a second chance because we were kids back then. And that makes Holland think, like, you know, maybe I can give him a second chance. And, yeah. So the reason this pissed me off, though, is, let me hint around it. I thought this was going to have 4 books in the series because Trey is getting his happily ever after, and we still had one more brother left, which his name just went completely out of my head, but there's one more brother left. So I thought we would have one more book, but this is the last book. And I'm about to tell you why it's the last book. And that is why this book actively pissed me off, okay? It actively made me upset and furious. And I don't know if I'll ever read Sawyer Bennett again because I'm that mad, okay? And I don't care if I'm a drama queen. I wrote a very long, strongly worded Goodreads review as to why. And I'm going to tell you guys why. But first, as I did with the Brooke Montgomery, I'm going to tell you what the trigger warnings are, because there was none. Where the difference is, okay? This is why, like, I really need to talk about this. Brooke Montgomery, I didn't like how that played out, but she told me every trigger warning. She did not hide anything. In that beginning part, she said death of certain people, the self-harm, like all of that is listed in there. She didn't hide anything. I didn't love how it played out, but I'm not upset about that. But just like with Icebreaker, which if we remember my rant about Icebreaker, Sawyer Bennett didn't put a single fucking trigger warning in front of this. And I'm going to tell you what they are before we go to the spoiler section, okay? Because I'm sorry, these type of trigger warnings are not a spoiler for regular romance readers. Like, we would need the option to know. Well, sorry, I always say this. Spoiler warnings, like, a trigger warning is a spoiler sometimes. A lot of times it is, but it's still a spoiler that you need to give people access to if they'll need it, okay? Because the trigger warnings for this book were death of a sibling on page, death of a parent off page, grief, drunk driving accident, alcoholic parent in the past, and previous child abuse, okay? Those are the trigger warnings. There's not a single thing. There's not a single thing in the beginning of the audiobook, which was particularly annoying to me because right after this one, right before this one, I was listening to the audio of Heartbreak and Harmony, and they say the trigger warnings like right there, as well as the Dear Rosie book by S.J. Tilley. The content warnings are shared like right there at the beginning. You can put those in your audiobook, okay? There was nothing. There's not a link to her site. There wasn't a single one of the ARC reviewers. I'm not an ARC reviewer for the Tryst. I bought this thing with my card and purchased it, and there was not a single ARC reviewer who said what the trigger warnings for this for. I am flabbergasted. Why are people doing this? Okay, see how mad I am. So now I'm going to tell you why I was pissed, okay? Put up a spoiler warning. You may have guessed it based on what I just told you the trigger warnings are, but that fourth brother, he dies on page very brutally in this book. Okay, a brother that for 3 books I thought was going to get his own happily ever after, especially for how some of the stuff in this book goes. Because I'm in the spoiler section, I'll tell you, the reason why 11 years ago Trey didn't say he was with Holland is because his brother was into her. He found out his brother was into her, and he didn't want to cause a rift in the family. So he was like, you're about to go away to school anyway. Like, we'll just break it up. We can't do this. Now it's 11 years later. His family never knew he had feelings for her. And his brother finds out that he's with her after he's already told him again that he's interested in dating her. So they have this big fight, and his brother acts like an absolute asshole. And even while I'm reading this, I'm like, dude, you're going to find your HEA. It's going to be okay, man. Like, it's going to be all right. Like, I am ready for his, like, character arc in another book, right? Because he is a jackass to his brother. And I'm like, once he really falls in love, he's going to realize that he was wrong, and it's going to be a beautiful ending to the series. Nope. They have a fight. His brother leaves, gets in a car accident, and Trey comes across this accident, blaming himself for it because he had this fight with his brother, and his brother ran out angry, and he couldn't stop his brother from leaving. And he comes across this car accident. The man who hit him was a drunk driver, but to be honest, his brother had had a couple beers too. But the other guy's the one who went in his lane and hit him. That guy's dead, and the brother is in a coma from the accident, never wakes up again. Trey now blames himself for this death. He says, like, his love of Holland caused all these problems. And our third act conflict is him feeling like he's not allowed to be happy because his brother is dead. Okay? Tell me how this fits into the romance genre. Like, just tell me, okay? Because I was discussing this with a few of my friends, and it's like, it really breaks some romance rules. Now, it doesn't directly, okay, people can argue, whatever, because Holland and Trey, sure, they get their happily ever after, okay, yes, they do. But tell me another sibling series, okay, where a sibling dies right before their book. Now, Again, I'm not interested in arguing with people about this. I'm telling you, I've been reading romance books for half my life, and if you've introduced a sibling group and they're all living at the beginning, they're usually all living by the end, right? Because how are you fully having a happily ever after when your brother died because of your relationship, right? How? It, again, would be one thing if he dies right away, right? Like, think of like Yellowstone, okay? There's a brother who dies in the first episode of that show, right? We're not attached to him. It kicks off a lot of feelings for the rest of the series, how we feel about stuff, but we weren't in love with him or waiting for him to have an HEA. For 3 books, I've been waiting for this brother, for his story, and he dies. And to make it worse, there's no content warning for the death of a sibling in this. So there's no way for you to, there's not even one for death. There's not even a content warning for death. There's nothing. So yeah, I told you I'd have a lot to rant about, but this was like, to me, 100% here, this was worse than Icebreaker, because number one, like, for Icebreaker, that author just didn't realize that talk of an abortion might be a content warning for some people, okay? They didn't realize it. And also, when I reached out to them, they had it changed within 5 days. They went in and added they added that in there, okay? This author has been writing books forever and has written dark romance before. How can you say to me that you don't know that death on page in a romance novel wouldn't be a trigger warning? I don't believe you. Other people have different feelings about abortion than me, and they have different feelings about whether mentioning it or having one or what. Like, it's fine. I am willing to hear that out. Like, it's all right. I've had people in my comments say, like, why does that need to be a thing? It just does. When in doubt, you put the trigger warning. When you're unsure, you lean towards it, okay? To not have a warning for the death of a sibling on page is unforgivable to me. I heard that. I was listening to this while I was on the treadmill at the gym, and I literally was devastated. I left the gym early because I was crying in public about this. And it's not that a book has never made me cry in public before. I'm not embarrassed to have done that. But I'm furious that you didn't think to warn anyone at all for doing that. And also, now because I'm feeling salty, I'll say, I think you didn't want to write another book. I think you felt lazy about the series and were like, how can I get out of writing this guy's book? Oh, I don't know. He's dead now. Because there was no reason or lead up or any speculation why that would happen. And instead of just saying I just want it to end here, I'm not really feeling inspired for him, maybe I'll get back to it someday, you just kill off the character so you don't have to write his book, so people can't ask you about it. I don't know. I just think of what if Melanie Harlow did that with Mabel? You know, she gave Mabel a book. She wasn't planning to give Mabel a book. She was like, I don't know, I'm not feeling it. What if she'd killed off Mabel in that plane accident with Joe instead of giving her a book? How much would people be freaking out? Okay? Anyway, I know not everyone reads this series. It's a niche series to me anyway, but I don't plan to read another Sawyer Bennett after this. I don't. I've read some in the past, and I don't love anything about them enough to keep going after this. So, don't care. Call me a bitch. Call me whatever. That's unacceptable, and I'm not, because of how many books she's written and how long she's been around, I'm not going to chase after authors to get them to do stuff. I also didn't read an arc of this. With Icebreaker, I read an arc, right? So I felt obligated to tell the authors, hey, I'm just warning you, when this comes out, you might want to add this in. This book was already out, and no one, not a single, I read, I think 32 reviews, not a single person gave a content warning. Not a single arc reviewer or an early reviewer said what happened. And I think that's unacceptable. So, moving on. Told you I was going to be mad. Moving on to something happier. So I reread The Redemption by Nikki Sloan. Read this for a patron. I read this book the day it came out many years ago. This was a book that she wasn't planning to write because she wrote the trilogy about filthy rich Americans. And this was the father who had tried to kind of steal Meyers away at different times. He's a 30-year-old man in there. And this is his story of redemption. He was in prison for 2 years because of things that happened in that series, and now he's out. He's trying to rebuild relationships with his family, try to establish something with his sons, and also get his reputation back. And so this woman named Sophia approaches him, and she is in like PR, and she wants to help rehabilitate him. I mean, she does have a selfish purpose for it, but that's what she offers him. And she very quickly proves to him that she could be of use to him. And so she becomes his assistant and his, like, they're working on this together. This is also a super hot relationship between the both of them, with some BDSM, with mild daddy kink in there, and it's just super hot. So I loved revisiting this. This was some of the like OG daddy stuff back then, like back when Katie Robert wrote like Your Dad Will Do, and like this was coming out, like this is when it was really popping off in more than just like niche kinky books, and this was great. So this is a 5-star book upon review. It's a 3.5 on the spice scale. This one has sex toys. The heroine is pierced. Love it. She has a clit piercing. And there's some spanking in here as well. There is trigger warnings for falling overboard and like almost drowning, grief, and previously incarcerated hero that we see. Okay, and then to round out October, I finished up I read this like wild little spicy book called Unhollowed by Shay Ruby, and I just read this on a whim. It wasn't Halloween, it was the 30th of October, and I was seeing everyone posting their like Halloween reads and everything, and I actually saw a piece of art for this that involved a MMF scene. Like it was a guy being fucked by both a girl and a guy, and it was hot. Okay, and when I saw that it was for a novella, I was like, let me give it a go. So I downloaded it and read it. This was freaking brutal and gory as hell, guys, because this involves a cult. There's literally ritual sacrifice that happens in here. There is like, yeah, there's drinking blood of virgins and murdering. Like this is gory. Okay, this was a lot. Okay, it was a lot. But I knew what I was getting into with it, so I wasn't like mad or anything. And this one involves this girl named Angel, and she was actually in love with Draven when she was young, and she was separated from him. And now that she's an adult, Draven is a part of a cult. He's part of this cult that, gives these rich men all these power and everything. And he finally has enough power that he can bring Angel to him. So he literally buys her from her parents, because her parents it's too much to explain, like too many details, but he buys her. And the thing is, though, to marry into this cult, you have to go through a ritual to do it. And so they do it on one of their nights, which I guess it's kind of like Halloween night, and all the other members are there, and literally they have brought in all these women that they are going to slit their throats and fuck them, and all those things are happening at the same time. She's supposed to have her like marriage ceremony to the hero. Now, when the marriage is actually supposed to happen, our hero I'm using very lightly. These are not the best of men. He has what's called a soulmate. It's basically your partner in misdeeds within the cult. His name is Killian, and he's a little bit jealous that Draven is in love with someone. And what's supposed to happen, though, is whoever your soulmate is, you're supposed to share everything with him. Now, this doesn't necessarily mean that you guys have to be in love, but either one of you who gets married or has a partner, like, you have to be willing to share them with your soulmate. It's a thing of not holding anything back. And Draven has made it clear to Killian that, like, she's going to be just mine. Like, I give everything to this cult. She's going to be just mine. And Killian is offended by that. And so the night that the marriage situation is supposed to happen, Killian actually locks Draven up in a room somewhere, and he steps in and forces Angel to marry him. And she can't back out, because like if she does, like, she'll just be used in the sacrifices as well. So she's forced to marry Draven. Now this is like supposedly the setup for a series. And we do have a scene where they all like share each other, and the cult, they like have a meeting after this has happened, and Draven is like, Killian tricked me. Like, she's supposed to be my bride. Like, what happened? And they end up saying that, well, we can't undo this because we refuse, like, our marriages are forever, but we are going to give Angel the choice of who she's with. Like, Killian can't force her to be with him, even though he's officially her husband, because she consented to marry Draven, and like, well, she might be married to you, and we won't stop you from trying to like convince her to be with you, but she gets to choose who she's with. And that's what they decide in this novella length. It's supposedly a prequel to The Heathens is what it will be. And so this ends with Angel and Draven like leaving together, and they're going to go like live their life, because this place they were at for the ceremony, like they don't live there. They get to go live in their normal life or whatever. They just have to come here for the what's it called? The rituals and everything. But Killian basically like warns them, because basically what they do, that fucking scene I saw, is both Draven and Angel, they fuck Killian together. And then they're like, there, that was your like paid off. Like now we're leaving together. But now they're both thinking about Killian when the story ends. So the thing is this was said it was a novella, but the author at the end, it kind of seems to me like she wasn't sure if anyone would like this story, because apparently she wasn't trying to make Killian so like hot and us to like him as much as we do. But now it's going to be an MMF story. Like she said, it will be. So this was actually a prequel. So that being said, to me, this was, she wrote like half of a book and then stopped because she wasn't sure if people would like it, because it ends mid, like this isn't a novella or like a prequel that like it just ends. And I was like, bitch, why'd you do that? Like either say less or say more. So I'm super intrigued enough to read if she actually writes a full story. I assume it will be the tug of war between these three and where we go with it. But I gave it 3.5 because like I didn't hate it, but it was also tough because literally, like, these trigger warnings, like, there's dubcon, cults, rituals, murder, religious trauma, captivity. Like, there's actual, like, bloody sacrifice of these innocent women. You are very clear that there's not even moral ambiguity here. Like, Draven will do whatever he has to have her, but everyone else is fair game. That he will murder it. Like, it's a lot. So, yeah, I gave it 3.5 stars. And, yeah. It was like 4.5 on the spice scale because of the type of spice that it was. So there was primal play, MMF, anal, pain play, blood play. Like there was a lot going on. Okay, got to keep it moving here. We're at the over the hour mark. But we have mostly rereads and then a couple of things to talk about here. So I reread Citadel by Claire Kent. This is book 5 in the Kindled series. This one is about Dell and Cole, and Citadel and Sanctuary are actually like a little duet that's within this. They're about 2 sisters, and it starts off with Dell and her sister are actually like, we start in a different place in the US than kind of any of the other ones have been, and they're actually on like a coastal place, but in the beginning their home gets like raided by wolf packs, and so her and her sister have to make a break for it. And they run into Cole, who he happens to be hunting for his brother, who he got separated from. And then they travel together a little bit, and Cole and Dell end up like sleeping together, but then he moves on the next day to go find his brother. And 2 years later, he shows back up there again. And he hasn't stopped thinking about Dell this whole time. And Dell isn't feeling too charitable towards him because he just ditched her. So love that one though. That's a 4.5 star for me. 2.5 on the spice scale. I love that series so much. Oh shoot, I didn't grab it. Okay, well then I reread King Cobra by Naomi Lucas. I'm rereading this whole series for a patron as well. This one is book 2 in the Naga Brides. Not to go too deep into it, but this is these human women, these Naga males, and they don't have any females of their type anymore. And for some reason now they are drawn to human women to mate with and to protect them. They are super possessive. There's lots of like dubious consent, non-consent usually when the relationships start, because like they're from a different place. Like for them, they have to like subdue their females and make them theirs, and these human women are like, this isn't gonna work, your body parts aren't the same, like I don't know. But I love Zaku and Daisy, especially because Daisy starts almost so pitiful. Really, she's so weak and terrified. And King Cobra is just like, I just want to make her my queen. Why is she making this so difficult? I just want her to be my queen. And I just like, I felt for him. And there's honestly this scene that like breaks my heart, okay, when he tries to fuck her for the first time. he realizes that he actually is too big for her, and he's devastated about it. Like, it's sad because he's like, I am mistreating my mate. I'm going to hurt her if I, like, it breaks my heart. But I actually bumped this one up from a 4 to a 4.5 this time around because I just appreciated Zaku so much more. I love it. So yeah, 4.5, 2.5 on the spice scale. Definitely has he's too big, breeding kink, and lots of cum. Like, we're swimming in the cum, okay? This has trigger warnings of non-con, dub-con, violence, near-fatal injury, and non-human pregnancy. So there we go. All right, then this one's going to be super shiny, so I won't hold it up for very long. I'll put up a picture. But I finished my reread of A Breath of Snow and Ashes, which is... when I finish it, it's always my favorite book in the series, and I think it might actually be. There's just so much good stuff that happens in that one. So book club for this is actually the night that you're watching this. It will be at 4 p.m. Central, 5 p.m. Eastern on my channel. I'll be chatting for sure. I think Amber from Amber Reads Romance will be there, and we'll be diving into that book. And it will be the last Outlander one we're doing this year, because now we're going to take a break until the new year to get through December and everything. But absolutely love this one. It has some of my favorite and most heartbreaking scenes of the whole series in here. There's just, it rips my guts out. So that's a 6-star read for sure. There are tons of trigger warnings in Outlander. Like, it's too much to just list, right? Okay, then I had another book for book club, which is All Through the Night by Connie Brockway. And this is for Rake Appreciation Society, which we will be having our live show. We've picked the date. It's for November 19th at 7 p.m. Mountain Time, 8 p.m. Central. So 8 p.m. my time, we'll be doing book club for this. So there's 2 books that we'll be talking about. This was my pick, All Through the Night, and Crystal picked Class Apart. They both have audiobooks. This one is actually in they're both in Kindle Unlimited too, but this one's in KU and also in Audible Plus, so you can listen to it for free. And this was narrated by, oh, I forgot to write it, dang it, I missed something. Well, it was narrated by a lady, and she was pretty good, but I won't go into much about this because we're going to talk about it at book club. But it's about a female thief and about a colonel, I think he's a Colonel Jack Seward, who is supposed to try to catch her because she supposedly has stolen a letter from one of the places she was thieving for that could really ruin some important people if he doesn't get it back from her. So, but it just so happens that he discovers that this thief is a female, and he's now very attracted to her. So it was a good time. We will talk about it at book club for sure. Okay, and then the last thing that I finished was a fan fiction, because as I said, we started the fan fiction readathon last night. This one was called A Box for Safekeeping by Drizzle O, and this one is a Dramini, and it is a marriage law one. So this was basically just a spicy little fun one, but it was also had a lot of heart to it. So it starts off with a marriage law, and Draco and Hermione are being forced to wed, and they both, like, she specifically is acting very, like, that she hates him when the ceremony is happening, but she more so hates that the wizarding world is making them get married. But soon after they get married, like, she moves into Malfoy Manor, and she comes to talk to him, and she's like, hey, listen. So they have to be married for a minimum of 1 year, is the thing. And she's like, since we have to be married to each other, how about we just have as much sex as we want to and do as many fun things as we want to? And Draco's like, I mean, I'm not going to say no to you. So this box for safekeeping is that, because neither of them have had a ton of experience, and she's like, we have to have sex for the law anyway. Why don't we just have fun? And I love this idea, because how often when you read like a forced marriage one where you're like, just take advantage of it, man. They're both attracted to each other. They haven't admitted that they both, have liked each other for a long time, but they are both attracted to each other. So she has this box, and they write down on slips of paper, like, all the kinky things they want to try. And then they put them in this box, and they basically, like, will, each time they have sex, they, like, pick a different thing to do. So they do all these fun little fantasies together, which is just, it was adorable. So there's, like, role playing. They do a day where they do free use the whole day, where Draco's just allowed to pop in and do whatever he wants. They do, they try some toys. They try all these things. So it was really quick, but it also, like I said, had a lot of heart to it, because, they eventually admit that, like, I've liked you since we were young, but we were on opposite sides of everything. So yeah, again, I won't be rating this, but I do recommend it, and I'll have a link to it down below if you want to read it. It works out to only be like 165 pages is what it was, so definitely good. Whew. Okay, so there we go. That is everything I've read in the last 2 weeks, which is crazy. Let me know some things that you've really enjoyed reading, what you're up to. And again, I'll have links down below to everything, both the fanfics and other books if you want to snag them. It does help me out if you use my Amazon links down below. I also have links to trying a Kindle Unlimited subscription or Audible subscription. I also get commissions for those, which is great. I also have my Etsy shop. Make sure you check that out. And yeah, thank you to the new patrons and channel members who joined. Thanks so much, friends, and we'll see you next time. Bye.